We're going to be talking about jazz and where do you start? How to learn a jazz standard and just the steps that you go through. So this is going to be just kind of a 30,000-foot view of how you would approach a jazz standard, learning the melody, learning the chords, learning soloing, and some different soloing techniques that I like to use for fun. So to get us started off, it's going to be Autumn Leaves. Now, there are several links in the YouTube description down below. One of them you'll see says Soloing in Small Ideas, I believe is the name of the lesson. Actually, in that lesson, which I put the link in the YouTube description, it will get you to the PDF, which has this progression, this Autumn Leaves progression, and a backing track for you. So we're going to refer to that later. So if you want to take a moment to print that out, that'd probably be a good thing to do. And in the meantime, I will serenade you with a little bit of Johnny Mercer's Autumn Leaves. There you go, a little bit of Autumn Leaves to get us started out with tonight as we're talking about jazz. How do you approach learning a jazz standard? Well, what is a jazz standard? Well, there's a certain library of songs, there's a certain grouping of songs that have become part of the jazz culture that so many different artists have done these same set of songs. So these have become kind of in the canon, and they're called jazz standards. So bluegrass has their grouping of songs that are kind of the standard ones, and jazz has it as well. So we call those jazz standards. And they are most often how everybody learns them is out of this book, which is called The Real Book. It's put out by Hal Leonard. You can go to Hal Leonard's website and buy that. They even have accompaniment tracks, and I would encourage you to get the accompaniment tracks. What you actually heard as I was playing the intro was the accompaniment track that Hal Leonard provides. So this is called The Real Book, and what it is a collection of these jazz standards. You've got the melody, and you've got the chords on top. And the melody is written just in a single note format, and the chords are rather plain. They don't give you all of the fancy substitutions, but it's just kind of mainly to be the main body of the song. Have what's called a lead sheet with the melody and the basic chords on top of it. Let's talk about what happens in a jazz form, and this is pretty much true in 99% of the jazz songs I have played in my lifetime. You would play the melody, then there would be a section of solos, then you'd play the melody again, just like I did on the opening song. I played the melody one time through, and then I soloed for a couple times through all the chords, and then I played the melody again. That three-part format is a constant format that jazz musicians have used over the decades. So now let's actually get into the song form itself. Jazz songs typically have an AABA form. What that means is you usually have 8 or 16 bars of an A section, and usually that is repeated. And then you go to the bridge, which it goes to a different section for usually 8 bars or so, and then you come back and you have the A section is replayed again, a recapitulation of that. So usually a jazz form is an AABA form. When you're doing the solos, you're still doing the chords over the AABA form. Now occasionally there will be a song that does not quite follow that. Autumn Leaves is one of those songs that kind of goes a little bit of a different direction, but it still has the same amount of measures that a typical jazz song would go. So this Autumn Leaves section is an AABC sort of a section. So if you want to look on the chord progression that was outlined in the link in the YouTube description called Soloing with Small Ideas, which is a great lesson on its own, where I take this song and we talk about different ideas with it. But if this is just the chord progression here, so basically you'll see that the first 8 bars is repeated, and then we go to the bridge, which is a different set of chords, and then we go to measure 20. The last 8 bars is a completely different set of chords as well. So that's why it has an AABC sort of form. So I'm going to take this song Autumn Leaves, and how I would approach that. Now here is the Real Book version of this. I just made a copy of it. And it has the melody written down here, which is very typical for a Real Book tune. They write it where it's easy to read, so it's usually in the staff, but that's not how a guitar player would play it. I could play it there, but it ends up being a little bit low. So that's the melody. I could play it in that octave, but usually I tend to play it up in octaves, which would put us around here. And that would be the melody. So it's written usually an octave lower than I would actually play it. But let me play the chords into my looper here real quick, and then I will start to illustrate a few things. So here we go. Let me see if I can do some chords. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there it is. So if I played the melody in its written octave, it sounds like this. If I played it up an octave, you hear it sounds a little bit better. Now, there's different ways that I could approach it. I'm just going to let that track play for a little bit. There's different ways I could approach playing the melody. I could maybe even add some octaves. So I can play it in octaves. That's one way I could do it. So the first thing you need to do is learn the melody and get used to playing it in the written octave and also the octave up, because that's the octave that you're probably going to be playing at it in a lot. That's as far as what you would do with the melody. You got to pay attention to the key signature and all of that, but basically it's just learning the melody of the song. I would learn it in the written octave, but tends to be that's a little bit low. You're generally going to be playing it in the octave above. So you're going to be generally playing in this 5th to 7th range on the guitar. So let's talk about, that's how you learn the melody. What about the chords? What do we do with the chords? Well, if you have the little sheet there, it has the chord progression written out there. Now, I didn't give you all the specifics because that's exactly what you're going to see in a real book version of it, just the chords. Well, you'll notice it's an A minor 7th, a D 7th, a G major 7th, and a C major 7th. Well, first of all, you'll notice there's lots of 7th. Yes, welcome to jazz. Every chord is at least going to have a 7th. Here's the thing. It's going to be written one way on the page, but you as the player can interpret it very differently. So even though it may just say an A minor 7th as that first chord, I could actually substitute other chords in there for it. An A minor 9th, maybe an A minor 11th. Instead of a D 7th, I would play maybe a D 9th, maybe even a D 13th, G major 7th, C major 7th, C major 9th maybe. So it's all about the little ornamentations, the little color tones that I can add to these chords. So I wouldn't just be playing A minor 7th, D 7th, G major 7th, C major 7th, down here in the open with open strings. In jazz, we tend to avoid open strings, and we will try and get something more in the meaty midsection of the guitar. The open strings, in jazz, we like a warmer sound, and the open strings tend to give a brighter sound. So we want to try and avoid that. So if I had a choice of playing an A minor 7th down here, or an A minor 7th up here, I would choose this one 100 times out of 100 when I'm playing jazz. But it's all about what notes can I add. A minor 9th, D, maybe a D suspended 13th, maybe a G major 9th, maybe a C major 9th. If some of these chords are unfamiliar to you, I did a fretboard workout series. I don't know if I put it in the YouTube. I think it is in the YouTube description if you go far enough down. Fretboard workout series specifically on jazz chords. And so you would learn these families of jazz chords and their variations of them. So not just the A minor, but the A minor 11th and A minor 13th and things like that. So if you're a little bit fuzzy on some of these jazz chords, I might encourage you to check that out. Check that fretboard workout series on that. So I've got the chords there. Color tones are always appreciated, at least a 9th. At least give me a 9th. Don't let a 7th just sit there and be. Don't play this. Not on a jazz gig. Is that all you got? You know, it's similar to basketball in that sense, where we all know the object is to get the ball into the hoop. The magic comes from how is he going to do that, and is similar with playing a jazz standard. We know the melody goes. That's not the real fun stuff. What's the real fun stuff is what can he do with that melody? what can I do with that melody? That's where the magic, that's where the fun comes from. Same thing with the chords. It's what can I add to these voicings? If I'm choosing voicings, let's talk about that for a second. If I'm choosing voicings, well, if I'm accompanying someone else, then I'm going to be probably a little in a register that's a little bit lower. If I was maybe doing a chord melody or soloing with a little bit more punch in it, then I might choose voicings that are a little bit higher. And I might do something like so I'm just voicing them a little bit higher, so I have to think about that. But if there's a singer singing or a sax player playing or something like that, their register is going to be a little bit higher, especially if it's an alto sax. So I don't want to necessarily be up in their range if I'm accompanying. I want to be away from their harmonic territory in that sense. So those are some things of what I can do with the chords. We've talked about the melody, what I would do with the chords. Now let's talk about soloing. How to approach soloing. Well, again, we could do a whole month long on just soloing, but I'm just going to give you some key things of how to approach soloing. I'm going to give you 4 or 5 different ways to approach soloing as you're coming at it. Well, approach number 1, I learned this very early on. You can never go wrong playing the melody and even maybe embellishing the melody a little bit. So if I have my little progression here, and if I wanted to play the melody, or it's time to solo, let's say, I could pretty much play the melody. Now, I don't want to just play the melody. I want to embellish the melody. I want to add a little bit other things to it. So I still had the melody in there. So I still have the melody in there. I'm just embellishing on it. And you can even take the melody and then spin out of it a different way. That's one way I can do it. So an easy way to do it. Steve, I don't know how to solo. Well, okay, the easiest approach is just to play the melody and try to slowly embellish the melody a little bit. Maybe instead of just going, maybe you can go somewhere else. Just do a little jump around that melody note. So I'm just varying just a little bit. And you'll never go wrong if you stay close to the melody. That's approach number 1. Approach number 2, someone even mentioned it in the chat there, talking about soloing. Ron is asking about soloing using chord tones. All right, so let's talk about that approach. This is another way to look at it. I can look at the chords that are involved. If I'm looking at my autumn leaves section right here, and I've got the first chord there is an A minor, I could figure out what the notes are in each of these chords. So an A minor 7th, the notes in an A minor 7th are A, C, E, and a G. How did I know that? Am I a musical genius? No. It's just a little bit of a nickel's worth of music theory will get you a long way. If you're unfamiliar with this, I did a series, How Music Works, I believe it was, and that was way back kind of in 2021. I think it's in one of the playlists on YouTube, free series, and just go through that and learn a nickel's worth of music theory. You're not going to get very far in jazz if you don't know what notes are in these various chords. And not just know them, but as soon as you see an A minor 7th, you know it's A, C, E, and a G. So I don't want to intimidate you by that, but I'm just saying like, hey, this is the tools of the trade. You got to know what notes are in each chord. The next chord is a D7. That would be a D, F sharp, A, and a C. All right. Well, both of those two chords right there, an A minor and a D7, have an A and a C in them. So I could then solo by using the chord tones of these chords. So if I started, here's that A minor and C again. If I know the chord tones, that gives me some options. I can hang around on these chord tones. Now, but you'll notice really quickly, oh, Steve, that's a lot. That's a lot that I have to do. Okay, well, let's go into the baby pool. Let's go into the baby pool. Take this sheet, and we're going to play just individual notes from these chords. But Steve, I don't know all that. Okay, let's start at the baby pool. Play the root. Here we go. G, C, F sharp, B, E. Maybe add a little rhythm to it. Okay, not the world's best solo. Can we do something else? Well, what if we did the third of every chord? You might need to write this down. Grab a pencil, figure it out. Well, an A minor, the third would be the C. On the D7, the third would be an F sharp. The G major seventh, the third would be a B. The C major seventh, the third. So let's hear what it sounds if I just play the third. Okay. I'm just playing the third of each chord. All right, we're sounding a little bit better, sounding a little bit more like something. Jazz is built off of the thirds and the sevenths of notes. What if I played the seventh of each chord? You might need to, again, you may need to figure it out, put it on a pencil, get your pencil, write it down on the thing, and I'm going to play the seventh of each chord too. So that A minor seventh, I would play a G, A, C, E, G. On the D7th, I would play a C, which is a D, F sharp, A, C. So I'm playing the seventh. On the G major seventh, I would play an F sharp. Okay, do you see the game I'm playing? Here we go, let's see how that sounds. Too bad. What if I played the thirds and the sevenths? We're getting somewhere. What if I walk in between? What if I do just thirds and I walk in between the thirds? So the third would be a C on that A minor, going to the D7th, and I walk in between them. Now remember, we're in the key of G, so I just do scale tones that are in the key of G. And then what if I need to go to a G major seventh? The third of that's a B, so I'm just going to walk to the B. What does that sound like? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I pretty much played the thirds and walked in between them. Occasionally I threw a little seventh in there. Different, it's another way to do it. Okay, that's approach number 2. That's chord note, kind of looking by chord tones. First one was I just play the melody and embellish it. The second way I can approach a solo is doing by this little chord tone playing around. I can choose different chord tones, and you can get overwhelmed really easy. That's why I say just write all the, play just the roots, or just the thirds, or maybe just the seconds to the thirds, and all of these, and you'll find these little lines that are starting to develop there. What else? Approach number 3. All right, I can group things by tonal centers. Well, Steve, that's a lot of chords. That's a lot of figuring out. You got to do that so fast. I can't do that. Great, then let's group these chords together by tonal centers. Chords that belong in the same key. Look what we have here. On that first line, I got an A minor 7th, a D 7th, a G major 7th, and a C major 7th. All 4 of those chords are in the key of G. I could just play in the key of G, noodle in the key of G for those first 4 bars, and it's going to be fine. Don't believe me? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, what kind of brilliance was that? I just played in G because all 4 of those chords are in the key of G. So I'm not thinking A minor 7, D 7, G major 7, C major 7. That's a lot to keep up with. I'm just thinking grouping them by tonal centers. Even that F sharp minor 7 flat 5 in the 5th measure, that is also in the key of G. So I can play in the key of G. The only chord in those first 8 bars that is not in the key of G is the B 7th. Okay, so I need to remember that. And many of young jazz players have learned this trick of playing by tonal centers, then they completely botch it when they get to a chord that is not in the key. Well, here's how you solve that problem. A B 7th, what notes are in a B 7th? A B, a D sharp, an F sharp, and an A. Well, the B, the F sharp, and the A are all notes that are in the G major scale. So the only note that differentiates that chord from anything else is the D sharp on that B 7th. So all over that B 7th, I need to make sure and hit a D sharp and not hit a D. That's wrong. I stepped on a landmine there, stepped on a wrong note. If I play a D over a B7, that's going to be wrong. It's going to be, I've got to do the D sharp. So if I played anything, I'm going to play a complete G scale over those first 8 bars, except for over that B 7th, I'm going to make sure and hit a D sharp instead of a D. Let's see if that works. G scale. Here's that B7. Did you hear that D sharp? Now I'm back in G. Did you hear that D sharp? I really hit that D sharp there. Now it goes to the bridge where we have a lot of D sharps. And then we go back to the key of G. D sharp. Okay, so I've simplified this entire song into everything. I can play everything except for maybe measure 23 and 22. I can play everything as a G scale unless when I hit a B7th, I got to remember to play a D sharp. That's it. Okay, so even with just that, I can play a fairly convincing solo that is actually going to make more musical sense than if you hear guys that are approaching it by the chords. Their solo seems to sound more like this. So I'm constantly just kind of going up arpeggios and down arpeggios, and none of it works. It works, but it's not really taking a solo anywhere. I'm saying words, but they're not making any sense. So you got to think about creating a line that's going to work over all of these chords, and that's some tricks on how to do that. Here's approach number 4. I can solo over chord substitutions. So I'm actually soloing over, I'm doing arpeggios over, I'm doing pentatonic scales over, I'm doing major scales over a chord that is not the one that is written. And here I'm going to give you 4 chord substitutions that will change that work in any situation. Okay, so it's covered the four main food groups of jazz. You ready? Here you go. And they all have to do with looking at the third of whatever chord that you're aimed at. So the A minor seventh, I go up to its third, which is a C, and I'm going to play a C major seventh arpeggio. In fact, this track is going a little bit too fast. Let me slow this down. I think I'm going to play each measure twice and really give us a good chance to hear what's going on here. So let me erase this track. And I'm going to take it a little bit slower, and I'm going to make each measure bar two bars. Here we go. 2, 3, 4. Over that A minor seventh, I'm going to play a C major seventh arpeggio. Let's see how that works. Ooh, that worked fine. Okay, that's a trick. In minor, I can go to its third and play a major. I flip the tonality for a minor chord. I go up to its third and play a major seventh arpeggio. All right, here's trick number 2. On a seventh chord, I go up to its third. In this case, the third would be an F sharp, and I'm going to play a minor seventh flat 5 arpeggio. So over a D7, I can play an F sharp minor seventh arpeggio. Okay, so that's trick number 2. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to do a C major seventh over that A minor seventh, and I'm going to do an F sharp minor 7 flat 5 over the D7. Let's see if this works. Sounded pretty good. Didn't sound half bad. Over that, what can we do over the G major seventh? Here's the third trick. Over the G major seventh, I go up to its third, which is a B, and I flip the tonality again, and I'm going to go minor. So for major chords, we go up to its third and play a minor. For minor chords, I go up to its third and play a major seventh. So over that G major seventh, I'm going to play a B minor seventh arpeggio. So over this G major seventh, I'm going to play a B minor seventh arpeggio. Over the C major seventh, I can do the same thing. Over the C major seventh, I go up to its third in E, and I play an E minor seventh arpeggio. It hits all of the right color tones, and you're not going to hit any wrong notes on that. Over that D7, I'm going to play an F sharp minor 7 flat 5. Over that G major 7, B minor 7. Over that C major 7, E minor 7. Okay, woo, that sounded pretty good. Here's the fourth and last trick. Over that F sharp minor 7 flat 5. F sharp, A, C, and E. Here's a trick. I can play a C major, so this one doesn't involve the third. So 3 of the 4 involve the third. This one does not involve the third. Over that F sharp major, or F sharp minor 7 flat 5, I'm going to play a C major 7th arpeggio. Let's see how that sounds. So let's go back to the A minor, C major 7, D 7th, B minor 7th over that G major, C major 7th, E minor, F sharp minor 7th. Okay, so that worked. Now here's a B 7th. Ooh, tricky, tricky. B 7th. What would I play over the B 7th? Well, I could play a D sharp minor 7 flat 5. Let's see if that works. And over that E minor 7th, I'm going to play a G major 7th. Here we go, let's try it. So all of that worked. The only thing that got a little wonky was the B7th. The B7th. And that we stepped on a few. It probably would be better to do maybe a fully diminished arpeggio there. But so that's the 4 ways that I can approach soloing. Okay? Now, you don't just close your eyes and hope for the best. No, yeah, a basketball player doesn't close his eyes and hope for the best. Okay, you got to know what you're trying to get. So I covered 4 different ways of approaching soloing. I can always play the melody and embellish that. I can embellish it with slides. I can embellish it with enclosures. We didn't talk about enclosures, but I think I put a lesson down in the YouTube description talking about jazz enclosures. I did a full lesson on it. This is just the basic idea. I take, that A minor 7th, the notes in the A minor 7th are an A, C, E, and a G, and instead of just playing those notes, I'm going to kind of go a note around them, So I'm going to go before that A, I'm going to play maybe a G sharp, and then hit the B, and then land on the A. So instead of going, I'm going to enclose that note with the notes on either side of it. Over the C, I could go maybe a B to the D to the C. And so I'm using chord notes that are either in the key or just one step off. So using enclosures, check out that lesson. It's a great lesson, great little lesson. There's a PDF on it and the whole bit. I end up with things that sound like this. What was that fun stuff? It's easy. It's a B7, and I just went back and forth on each note. And I ended up with a 2-bar lick out of just going through the notes in that. Different ways to approach a solo. All right, so there's some larger issues there that we could dive into, but that's how I would approach doing a song like this. So we're going to put that. We're going to put this track on again.
1, 2, 1.
Let's do some enclosures. Maybe I could lower the octave. Hey, I did my little back and forth on notes there. Give me some octaves. Well, let's do the third of each chord. Play around thirds of chord. Okay, now maybe I can just play in the key of G, remembering to play a D sharp over any B7s I see. Walking in between notes. Enclosures. Maybe I can even do chords, kind of a chord melody thing. I'll wait till we get to the bridge, and I'm going to mess around with chords. right, there you go. Fun stuff. Okay, so we in the last 40 minutes or so, we've kind of covered jazz, which is a lot. Maybe we'll kind of over the next couple of weeks we'll dive into these lessons a little bit more. That little trick of flipping, if it's a minor chord, flip it to go to the third and do the major seventh chord. Learn those 4 little tricks. Those are great. You can do so much with just that idea. Busdude is asking, anything published that would assist someone with jazz scales for soloing? Well, there's a lot that's published on it. I have not found much of it useful. There are a lot of guys that have printed a lot of formulas about scales for jazz. You need to use the bebop scale for this. You need to use the altered Mixolydian Hungarian minor scale for this. And if you don't know that, then you're never going to be... Okay, wow, that is a lot to learn. It's easy for us as guitar players to kind of start to think, yeah, if I can give me the formula and I'll just do the scale. I can do a diminished scale over a diminished chord. Oh, that's great, and I can use it over this thing. Yes, you can get some mileage out of that. There's ways to do that. I'm not discouraging that at all. I'm just saying you can go down that rabbit hole for a galaxy and learn every little permutation of every Hungarian minor mode with a flatted, sharped this or that, and learn it in all 12 keys and still not play a decent solo. You gotta let your ear be your guide with all of that. You can get by with kind of, if you want to. I mainly solo by arpeggios. I'm thinking about tonal centers or about arpeggios. And if I get too far up the neck or I want to do something else, then I maybe just kind of do a little chromatic line to get me down where I need to go. What was that? I don't know. I'm just going until I get down to a note that I like. And then I'm off and running again. So while, yes, you can use a lot of formulas for scale notes and stuff like that, it's great, it's wonderful, I would encourage you to work on your ear more than that. You can get a lot of guys that are playing all of that and they don't create a solo that's worth listening to at all. It would be better for you to just play whole notes and try and figure out how to walk these notes in between these different chords and have them sound like something. So let your ear be your guide. That was what you need to train it a little bit better. Don't get discouraged that you don't sound like Pat Martino the first time you sing it. The first time you start playing it, it just doesn't work that way. When Albert's asking a good question, when playing jazz, do I use a thicker pick? The answer is yes, I do. I like when I'm playing jazz, I use these little Jim Dunlop smaller jazz picks. I like those. Now, there are other things. I don't know if I have any on my stand here. I don't typically, for jazz, like to use my regular medium pick like this. It just is a little too floppy. I want a little bit more stability on that. So I like to use a smaller, thicker pick. This is a 1 millimeter. Now, you don't have to go crazy on it, but I don't want a thin pick. It just doesn't sound good for jazz. Let me tell you about a couple of resources and we'll get out of here. In the YouTube description, I have the full Autumn Leaves song lesson. In that song lesson, I teach the melody, I teach the chords, I teach advanced chord substitutions as you could do in there. I teach little tricks over what you can do over this chord, particularly that B7th. I teach you some diminished chord tricks over that. I teach you a basic solo guitar arrangement of it. I give you an advanced solo guitar arrangement. If you are we get backing tracks to all of that. If you're interested in getting the full lesson on Autumn Leaves. Check out the link in the YouTube description below, and that will get you to the full Guitar Gathering Academy lesson on that song. You'll learn the melody low, you'll learn it high, you'll learn advanced chords, regular chords, chord substitution tricks, and a couple of solo guitar arrangements. So no matter where you are in your development, beginner, medium, or advanced, you'll have something there. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in learning a classic jazz standard, Autumn Leaves, check out that song lesson. There you go. Peg says the song lesson is great. Thank you so much. Ron is saying, looks like medium strings, not lights on that guitar. Yeah, I probably do have a little slightly thicker strings on this jazz guitar than I would have on my Strat or something like that. I generally use lights on my Strat and on my Tele, but on this one I have a little bit thicker strings. Now they're not flat wounds or anything, but it probably like something like light top, heavy bottoms, where maybe it goes, instead of from 10 to 43, maybe it goes from like 11 to 46 to just give you a little bit more of a beefy tone. The Jazz Enclosures free video lesson, that is down in the YouTube description. Check that out, learn that out. I've been adding new songs to our song lessons in the store. We just finished up our Guitar Gathering Academy. In fact, I'll play us out with one of those songs. Had our Guitar Gathering Academy. The last song that we did was I Surrender All, because we were coming up to Easter. So we were doing hymns. And I have put the song lesson for that. If you wanted to just buy just the song lesson for that, you can buy that. I've got 3 of the 4 in there. I'll get the 4th one in tomorrow. So I put in Blessed Assurance today. I put in I Surrender All. Come Thou Fount, we've got that in there. I think Abide With Me is in there. How Great Thou Art is in there. I'll put Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus in there tomorrow. In the jazz section, I added Autumn Leaves. There's a couple of Beatles songs in there. I'm trying to add more and more each day. So if you're interested in getting the full lesson to all those, check those out. I haven't completely worked out this arrangement, but let me see if I can play a little bit of this I Surrender All. If you're interested in this arrangement, you can buy the full lesson of I Surrender All. And this is what that turned into be. So let me kind of get back in steel string world here. Adjust my mic here a little bit. When aiming the mic, you want to hit it just generally about right where the body of the guitar meets the neck. And that gets a good sound. Okay. little bit of I Surrender All for you. That arrangement turned out particularly nice. I hope you guys had a great Easter. If you're interested in that arrangement, that is in the YouTube description down below there, and you can purchase that arrangement there. Hey, enjoy your instrument, enjoy your guitar. It's not just rules and things you have to learn and an endless taskmaster. Just enjoy the sounds that you're making out of this instrument. It doesn't have to be complicated. Don't compare yourself to others. Comparison just kills. It just kills the creativity that is inside of you. Turn off all of these videos from Instagram and all these other guys that just make you depressed on the inside. Try and get the music that is inside of you out. That's what matters. That's what AI can't do. You know, I heard a song developed by AI today. You know what? And it was amazing. It was completely amazing. It was discouraging as all get out. Why do I even bother learning? I don't do it. I do it because it makes me feel good. I do it because playing music makes me feel alive. Okay, so that's why I do it. So even though you can get a computer to do a picture, is not going to change the mind of the artist. It's about creating something that's coming from you, and that's what something a computer can never do. You are much more creative than anything that's coming out. A little bit of encouragement. Keep up with the great work in your learning. We'll have another live lesson next week. Thanks for all those that give. That's such a blessing. We've got the PayPal link down there as well. Thank you to Diane, our moderator, my wonderful wife, who's been producing and does such a wonderful job. Thanks to everybody that was a part of tonight. We'll see you guys next time.